So, viruses are our next topic. In 1935, American biochemist Wendell Stanley inferred that viruses are not alive. So, we have abiotic is living factors, or is non-living factors. Biotic are our living factors. So, when we talked about bacteria, they are alive. They have to follow our 8 characteristics of life. Viruses don't fit all of those 8 characteristics, so we can't consider them living. They act very similarly to something that's living, but in that they all enter living things, and they use the machinery of the cell to produce more viruses. But they can't survive on their own. They can't make energy. They can't reproduce on their own. They need to be in another cell to do that. The image at the bottom is the rhinovirus. So this is an image of what causes the common cold. Structure of viruses. So viruses do come in a few different shapes, but they all have a capsid. So that's the protein coat. They have DNA or RNA as the genetic material. That's what actually takes over and makes us, is what allows the virus to work into our cells, and our cells make more viruses because they use that DNA. And some viruses have an extra layer that's called an envelope. So covering part of the area that is the basic structure. So a bacteriophage is very interesting in that that's what a lot of scientists studied to start learning about viruses. So it actually looks like a little machine. It's the one on the left. This is a T4 bacteriophage, and it looks like a little thing that creeps along, and it looks like a little robot, actually. But they infect specifically bacteria. So it's a virus that infects a bacteria. Here's an image. This is an actual microscope image of a bacteria. That's the center thing that's off the bottom. And then these are viruses that are attacking the bacteria. It's very weird. They attach to the surface, and then they literally send a little, like a little needle into the bacterium and send the DNA in, and that's what infects the cell. There are 2 types of viral infection. So they're either lytic infection, which are called virulent viruses. This is where the virus enters the cell, it makes copies of itself, and it causes the cell to burst. So this is something that you'd get and you'd feel sick within the week or 2 weeks. This is the common virus that we come into contact with. Otherwise, there is what's called the lysogenic infection. And these are some viruses, they're temperate viruses, where it integrates its DNA into DNA of host cell, but it doesn't take over right away. It actually, the viral genetic info is replicated along with the cell. So your cell divides into 2 cells, and the DNA is in it, and then divides again into 4, and then into 8. So now you have 8 cells that have this viral DNA, and that DNA is inactive. And then there's some kind of trigger, some environmental factor that causes it to become active, and it will start making new viruses. So this, I know that HIV is one of these lysogenic infections. So this is one where you might not know you have it for a while. Here is an image of the 2 cycles. So you see on the top, it is the lytic cycle. So you can see the little viral particles being made, and then they break out of the cell in the upper right-hand corner, and they go on to infect other cells. Whereas on the bottom, it just has the DNA is becoming part of your cell's DNA, and this is actually a bacteria, and it just keeps going around and around until something causes it to break out and actually make new viruses. Viral disease in humans. So viruses cannot be treated by antibiotics because antibiotics go against living factors in a bacterium, whereas a virus is not living, so we can't go after those features of it. So we have to use a vaccine to prevent it. You can see in the picture, a baby is getting an early vaccine that we give. So examples of different viruses that humans have come across in the past is poliovirus. This, if you have grandparents, they might have been around at that point where poliovirus really affected the the country in like the 50s and early 60s before they came up with a vaccine. So you can see in the picture, it attaches to nerve cells. And what happens is it weakens your muscles and eventually you can't move. So in the lower left, there is an older man. He's in a contraption called the iron lung. And basically, when people had this, their muscles stopped working, so they couldn't breathe. So this structure helped them. You see in the very middle, there's a little girl. She's getting a polio vaccine. So at first, it wasn't a shot. They actually gave it in sugar cubes, and some people got it in school. And we have basically eradicated polio. We don't really worry about it anymore because of that vaccine. Other things are the common cold, the influenza, so it's flu shot time, and smallpox, that's what this picture is. The arrow is a little off. So smallpox is related to chickenpox, but smallpox does affect you worse, I guess you would say, but it's similar where you get marks. AIDS, chickenpox, which most students have to have a chickenpox vaccine. When I was in school, they didn't have a vaccine, so I actually got the chickenpox. They actually had chickenpox parties where if a student on the block had chickenpox, everybody would send their kids there to get the chickenpox so you would get it over with. Getting chickenpox as an adult is not as fun. Your body doesn't react to it as well. And then there's measles. Most people get vaccines for measles as children. So the examples, it shows there's a fever, rash, and inflammation of the upper respiratory tract. All stuff that's not fun. But these are all caused by viruses. And our one main thing to fight viruses is a vaccine. So that's it for this video.